They told me Sarah's house had been empty for 30 years. They told me no one lived here. No one had lived here, not since the winter. The river froze black and the neighbors heard her scream from the attic. They told me that sound was the last thing the valley ever heard from her. But the night I crossed the threshold, someone welcomed me in. The door groaned like a throat clearing. Before speech, yet no wind stirred. No hinge was touched. It opened slow, deliberate, not like a door, but like a decision. Inside, the air was too warm for a house without heat, and every shadow seemed to face me, waiting for a cue I had not given. They say a house dies when its last resident leaves, but Sarah's house was not dead. It was breathing shallow, hungry, as though it had been holding something in for decades. The silence here did not feel empty. It felt trained, like it was listening back. I stepped inside, because I had to know if the stories were true, not the ghost stories, the other ones, the ones whispered in court records, buried under sealed archives, scrubbed from the county registry. Sarah was not just another missing woman. She was not another name in the cold case files. She was part of something older, something designed to vanish people without leaving bodies, without leaving questions, because the right people already had the answers. You're not supposed to hear this part. Her disappearance was not an accident. It was a message. And the ones who sent it, they made sure everyone forgot the language. But Sarah's house did not forget, and it did not forgive. The first thing I heard was not footsteps. It was not creaking floorboards or the moan of old beams under winter weight. It was her voice, faint, almost tender, like someone standing right behind you when you know no one is there. She did not say hello. She did not call for help. She whispered my name. I do not know how she knew it. I did not even know that his house existed a week ago. But I know this. The deeper I went in, the more I realized Sarah's voice was not haunting this house. It was using it, and someone or something wanted me to hear her. The parlor smelled of old wood and something sweeter, something wrong, a perfume that had no source except memory. The mirror above the mantel was cracked like it had been punched from the inside. I stepped closer and saw her. Not her face, not her body, but her reflection. It lingered there as if the glass remembered her better than the earth did, and for a breath so quick I almost doubted it. I saw the corner of her mouth lift, not at me, but at the thing standing just behind me. When I turned, there was nothing, but the air pressed close like the house was leaning in to listen. I told myself I was imagining it, but that is the lie men tell when they are too proud to run. The house wanted me calm. It wanted me deeper inside. And like every man who thinks he chooses his own path, I obeyed. They tried to erase her from every record. No grave, no police file, no last will or testament. But there are other records, older than paper, older than law. Walls remember, floorboards remember, mirrors remember. Someone had hidden more than her death. They had hidden her voice, a voice that now curled around me like smoke from a fire. No one admitted was burning. I saw something etched into the frame of that mirror, a name scratched over and over until the wood splintered. Not Sarah, not anyone I knew. But I would learn that name before I left this house, and I would wish I had never spoken it aloud. Behind me, the door shut on its own. The sound was soft, almost polite, but final. And then I heard it again, that voice, Sarah's voice. But it was not pleading, it was not afraid, it was rehearsing, repeating something low and steady like a prayer meant for someone else, a prayer meant for me. I should have left then, but curiosity is a leash stronger than fear. And when the house began to hum beneath my feet like something waking up, I took my next step forward. The hallway was too long for the size of the house, too narrow, too stretched like space itself was holding its breath. Every step I took landed softer than it should have, like the floor was swallowing sound. Halfway down I stopped because I realized something terrible. The silence was not empty. It was waiting. It was rehearsing me the way an echo rehearses a voice before it speaks back. Then I heard her again. Not above, not below, but inside the walls. Sarah speaking like she was standing on the other side of the plaster, whispering through bone and wood. She said one word, not my name, not hers, a word I did not know yet still understood, like an old memory coming back wrong. It felt heavy, commanding, like it was not meant to be spoken by anyone still alive. I reached the next door. The brass knob was warm against my hand, too warm for a house without heat. When I pushed it open, the hinges did not creak. They sighed like they had been waiting for me specifically. Inside was nothing but dust, no furniture, no curtains, no light, and yet the air was moving like someone had just walked through moments before. I felt it brush past me, soft but certain, and I heard her voice again, only closer, clearer, almost at my ear. Do you want to see? It was not a question. It was an order, dressed as kindness. And then I saw them, tiny scratches beneath the paint on the far wall, dozens, maybe hundreds. They were not random. They were letters forming words only visible in certain light. The same word she had whispered to me in the hallway. The one that felt older than the house, older than Sarah, older than me. I backed out of the room. But the door did not close. It stayed open like an eye watching me leave. And for the first time since stepping inside, I realized this place was not haunted in the way I had been taught to fear. It was not a prison for her. It was a mouth learning how to speak through her voice, and I had just taught it mine. I turned toward the staircase and felt the entire frame of the house shift, like it exhaled when I looked away. The steps waited in silence, old wood swollen from years of damp, but when I placed my foot on the first one it groaned not like wood, but like a voice. It said one. I froze, thinking I had imagined it. But when I stepped to the next, it spoke again. Two, only this time the tone was lower, almost pleased, each stair counting down instead of up, as if I were not climbing toward something but sinking deeper with every rise. By the fifth step I understood. The house did not want me to reach the top quickly. It wanted me to savor it, to hear each number drawn out like a ritual. I felt dizzy, like gravity had turned sideways. When I reached the landing, it whispered a breath that was not mine, and the air felt thicker, like it was waiting for me to speak back. A window at the end of the hall rattled against its frame. I went to close it, but the glass would not meet the sill. The night outside pressed in black and heavy, yet the cold air stayed out. Instead, her whisper seeped through, warm like breath against my ear. You are almost ready. I do not know why I answered, but I did. What do you want? The walls trembled faint but sharp, like a shiver running through timber bones, and the glass fogged over from the inside, forming shapes like letters, but they smeared before I could read them. Then I realized the smears were fingerprints. Fresh, small but deep, like they had pressed through from the other side. Something tugged at me. A pull behind the sternum, like the house was drawing me further, whether I agreed or not. The door behind me closed on its own, and I heard her voice again, stronger now, not distant, not fading, but focused sharp, alive. Come down. But I was already upstairs, and when I turned the hallway no longer led back to the stairs, it led deeper into a part of the house I had never seen before. The floor shifted under me, not from age or rot, but like something was crawling through the beams, holding its breath so I would not hear it, but I heard it anyway. Sarah's voice low and steady, travelling through the wood like water through a pipe, repeating words I could not fully make out. Yet my heart understood them before my mind did. I crouched and pressed my ear to the boards and felt the vibration, not just sound but rhythm, like someone knocking from far away. No, like someone speaking in a tongue older than speech. Her tone was not pleading. It was patient, rehearsed like she was reading a line someone else had written for her. I tried to answer, "Sarah, are you here?" But the boards swelled against my palm, like they did not want me to say her name. Like the house itself rejected the sound of it, and then the voice changed. Not louder, clearer. Do not call me that. I jerked back, staring at the floor. The boards seemed to breathe, flexing upward like ribs. The dust on them shifted, forming shapes that almost spelled something before breaking apart again. I thought about leaving, but curiosity is poison dressed as courage. and I had already swallowed too much. When I stood, the air felt thicker, heavy with heat that should not exist in a dead house. Each breath tasted like old copper, like the aftertaste of a bitten tongue. Then I saw it, a seam running the length of the hallway, too straight to be age, too precise to be damage. A hatch, something beneath me waiting to be opened, or waiting for me to fall through. Sarah's voice hummed again, now closer, as if the wood itself carried her breath. It said a name not mine, not hers, and the moment I heard it, I felt the air in the room bow like it recognized authority, a name no one should ever say out loud. I stepped back and the boards groaned like disappointment, like they wanted me to answer, like they already knew I would. At the end of the hallway, a single frame hung crooked on the wall. Its glass was clouded with dust, yet when I wiped it clean, the picture inside blurred again, like it refused to be seen. It showed a family standing in front of this very house, faces, pale hands stiff with the formality of the age. But every time I blinked, their features melted away. Everyone except her. Sarah sharpened with each glance. First her outline, then her eyes, then the faint curve of her lips, holding back a secret she wanted me to ask about. I tried not to look, but my eyes kept returning, as if the photograph itself had gravity, as if it wanted to burn her image into me. The air behind me moved. No breeze, no footsteps, just weight, shifting like someone was leaning over my shoulder, watching me study the picture. I whispered her name without meaning to, and the photograph changed. The house behind her darkened. Its windows blackened like they were filled with water. The family vanished completely. Only Sarah remained standing alone, yet smiling like she knew exactly where they had gone. I dropped the frame, and it did not shatter. The glass did not even crack. Instead, it rocked gently on the floor, as if someone invisible had caught it before it hit. I felt something brush my ankle, light, but deliberate, like fingers testing how real I was. Then her voice came again. Not through the walls this time, not through the floorboards, but from the photograph itself. Clear, close alive. You are late. I wanted to leave. I wanted to tear the picture apart, burn it, bury it. Anything to stop that voice. But the frame would not open. The backing was sealed, not with nails, not with glue, but with something older, something stronger. And the longer I held it, the more I realized this was not a photograph at all. It was a door no one else could see, and now it had seen me. I found the candle on the mantel, cold wax cracked from years of neglect. It should not have burned, but when I struck a match, the flame leapt high, as if the wick had been waiting, not dead, just asleep. The light wavered across the walls, and for a moment I thought I saw her shadow moving just outside its reach. The candle swayed in its holder like it was answering a voice I could not yet hear. Then her whisper came low, steady, close enough to warm the side of my face. Do not look away. I froze, watching the flame dance. Each time I thought it would gutter out. It flared brighter, stronger, like something was breathing life into it from within the room. I spoke without thinking, my words trembling out of me. Sarah, is that you? The candle flickered once like a nod, then twice like a warning. The heat in the room deepened as though the flame had grown too powerful for such a small space. Sweat gathered on my palms, even though winter pressed cold against the glass outside. And when I whispered her name again, the flame bent toward me like it wanted to listen. I leaned closer. What do you want? The wax ran down the side fast, too fast, as if the candle had been burning for hours, not seconds. A pool of molten light forming shapes on the wood, like letters too warped to read. I heard a sound behind me, the slow rock of wood on wood like someone shifting in a chair. But there was no one here. Only the candle. Only the voice. You should not have come alone. The flame flared hard, bright enough to throw my own shadow against the wall. Only it was not alone. Another shadow stood beside it, taller, narrower, bending forward as though leaning into me. When I spun around, there was nothing, but the room felt crowded, too crowded for its size. The candlelight swayed again, a slow, deliberate rhythm, like breathing, like counting, like waiting, and then it began to dim. Not because it was dying, but because something else in the room was drawing its light away. The darkness here was not absence, it was hunger. I turned toward the staircase again, the candle still burning even though I had never touched it after the first spark. The flame did not fade with distance. It followed me. Each step I took, it swayed in perfect rhythm, as though the house itself carried it forward. I set my foot on the first stair and heard the number 9. The second stair groaned. 8. The third, 7. Counting backward as if it were lowering me into something rather than lifting me higher. By the 4th step, the air thickened, and the candle flame stretched long and thin, like it was being pulled toward the landing. My heartbeat matched the rhythm of the counting. Each step, another beat, another breath, stolen out of me. When I reached the top, Sarah's voice was no longer faint. It was right there at the edge of my hearing, like she stood behind the next door. Come in. No please. No command. The knob turned before I touched it, and the door creaked open. Slow, deliberate like the first one downstairs. I felt the heat roll out first, thick and wet, like breath from something living. Inside there was no furniture, no curtains, no dust, just emptiness so complete it hurt my eyes. Yet the candlelight refused to enter. It stopped cold at the threshold like the room itself had swallowed it. Sarah whispered again this time, so clear it felt like she was inside my chest. Step through. I did, and the floor sank slightly, as though the wood remembered weight it had not carried in decades. The door swung shut behind me, sealing out every hint of the hallway. I tried to open it again, but the knob locked under my hand, twisting like a wrist pulled from my grip. The voice rose louder, steady, almost rehearsed, not words I could understand, syllables that felt older than language rolling through the boards under my feet. The sound circled the room, pressing close until I swore I felt breath on the back of my neck. I whispered, "Where are you?" And for the first time she answered in English, "Beneath you." The sound beneath my feet followed me back into the hallway. Every board groaned like it wanted to speak, but could only cry. A thin trail of moisture crept along the wall, darkening the plaster like veins under pale skin. I traced it to a locked door swollen in its frame, as if the wood itself had been weeping for years. No handle, just an old iron keyhole, breathing cold air into the corridor. I pressed my ear to the door and almost pulled away too fast to hear it. Sarah's voice on the other side, low, trembling but steady as though she were holding something back. Not fear, not pain. Something worse. A laugh that never learned how to sound human. I whispered her name, and the door shivered beneath my hand. Moisture welled from the bottom seam, pooling around my boots. Warm, not cold. It tasted in the air like old tears mixed with rust, like breath pulled from an open grave. I tried to push the door, but it resisted. Not because of any lock, because something on the other side was holding it shut with deliberate strength. When I leaned closer, I caught words between the whispers. "It is not mine anymore. Give it back." The wall around the door throbbed faintly like a heartbeat. The sound traveled through the hallway floorboards, beating in time with mine, until I could not tell which pulse was mine and which was hers. The air pressed inward heavy like the whole house leaned close to hear what I would say next. Then the voice changed. Not Sarah now. Deeper, older, like stone grinding on stone. "Leave her." The words slid into my skull, raw and cold. I stumbled back, but the door bulged outward once, like it might break off its hinges. A sob rolled through the wood, louder than any human throat could make, and the moisture on the floor steamed as if the house was exhaling heat. I knew then this room did not hide her. It held something else, something that wanted out. The whisper came again. "Sarah, this time, desperate thin, do not open it." And then silence, thick and final, as though the house had swallowed her voice whole. On the table in the upstairs hall sat a single book buried beneath a sheet of dust, so thick it looked like frost. I brushed it with my hand, and the dust did not scatter. It curled away in ribbons as if something beneath it still breathed. The cover had no title. Only deep scars running across the leather as though fingernails had tried to claw their way in. I opened it slowly. Every page was blank, yet my eyes refused to believe it. The paper held faint bruises. Impressions of words that had been scraped away. Not written with ink, but carved into the fibers themselves. When I tilted the page to the candlelight, the shadows of sentences appeared dark and wet, like fresh wounds. I could not read them all, but fragments bled through. Names I had never heard. Dates that should not exist. One line repeated on every page in a hand that grew shakier the deeper I turned. She is not gone. She is waiting. She is not gone. She is waiting. As I whispered it aloud, the candle flared high enough to scorch the ceiling. The hallway darkened around me, even though the flame had grown brighter, like the light itself had been stolen from everywhere else and forced into this one trembling fire. I heard Sarah's voice again. But now it came from the pages, not the air, each word pressed upward, as if the book itself spoke through the cracks in its erased script. You are close now. The letters shifted under my fingers, rearranging themselves into words I should never have seen. It told me where to go. It told me what to bring. It told me I would not leave alone. Then the book slammed shut on its own. The dust leapt into the air, hanging there like smoke refusing to fall. I tried to drop the book, but it stuck to my hand like the leather had softened into skin. The heartbeat from the locked door pounded louder, echoing through the spine of the book itself, as if they were connected by veins instead of wood and nails. A sound rose from the floorboards, not quite a voice, not quite a growl. Something beneath me shifting as if it had just been woken. I forced the book shut with both hands and felt it twitch like an animal trying to break free. It wanted me to read more, but I already knew the cost. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the hallway with the book beside me, breathing slow like something alive. The candle burned without end, its wax pooling but never running out. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard wood shifting beneath me like footsteps too soft to place. By dawn, the sound stopped. Then another began. A slow creak back and forth, rhythmic steady, coming from the parlor downstairs. I crept toward it, every step louder than it should have been, as though the house wanted Sarah to hear me coming. The rocking chair sat in the corner, where the morning light broke through the curtains. Its cushion sagged, as though someone had just risen from it. The chair moved without hands, without wind, swaying like a cradle for something that refused to rest. The moment I crossed the threshold, the movement stopped. I placed my hand on the back of the chair, and it was warm. Not just warm, but body warm, like flesh and blood had been there moments before. The fabric smelled faintly of perfume, old flowers wilted long ago. Beneath it a sharper scent, iron salt, the trace of something buried too deep to name. Then the chair moved again, slow, deliberate, tilting forward, as if urging me to sit. I fought it, but my knees buckled anyway, and I sank into the cushion. It sighed under my weight, not like furniture, but like lungs emptying. A voice rose from beneath me, not from the air, not from the walls, but from the cushion itself. Sarah's whisper curling around the bones of the chair. You feel it too, don't you? The room darkened, though the sun still climbed outside. The light bent around me, pulled toward the center of the floor, where shadows twisted together, forming shapes of fingers pressing through the boards. The rocking quickened harder, faster, until I felt as though I would be thrown out. But I could not move. The chair held me. The voice deep and still. Sarah, but strained as though something else spoke with her. In unison. You should not have come alone. The floorboards beneath me buckled inward like breath being drawn from the earth itself. The air turned damp heavy. The chair rocked one last violent time and then froze solid again. I tore myself free, stumbling to the wall. The cushion remained indented, as though someone else still sat there. The hallway beyond the parlour should have been short. I had walked it 100 times in daylight, yet now it stretched too long, twisting narrow, like the house had swallowed itself from the inside. No windows, no light, only the faint hiss of my own breath pressing against the walls. Each step I took seemed to push the far end of the corridor farther away. The boards groaned underfoot, not in protest, but in warning. The air pressed close until I felt the plaster grazing my shoulders, like the hall itself was trying to squeeze me out or crush me flat. I kept the candle high, but its glow dulled against the walls, as though the darkness here did not reflect light. It devoured it. Then her voice came thin at first, then sharper, bouncing off the walls in fragments, like shards of glass. She wasn't calling my name anymore. She was repeating something over and over. I couldn't make it out. The sound doubled back on itself, echoing forward and behind, as if I were walking into my own footsteps. Halfway down, I stopped. The air changed. The smell of dust gave way to something sweeter, older, like fruit left too long to rot. I pressed my hand to the wall and felt warmth, not surface warmth, but deep beneath, as though blood ran inside the house itself. The voice grew louder, suddenly clear. Not Sarah, but something wearing her tone. Come closer. The hall twisted left, where no turn should exist. I knew the floor plan of this house. There was no left turn here, but when I rounded it, I saw a doorless opening, and beyond it, nothing but pitch black. My candle guttered, nearly died. Then flared again, lighting the first few feet inside. I called out Sarah's name. The echo did not return my voice. It came back different, lower, slower, repeating the syllables. Wrong, as if tasting them for the first time, I took a step forward and the floor pulsed beneath my boots like a vein. Thud. Pause. Thud. The black ahead rippled like liquid and fee. Rom its depths. Her whisper slid out close to my ear, though no one was near me. You're not walking the hall. The hall is walking you. Behind me, the way back was gone. I found myself back at the stairwell, though I had not turned around. The house had folded me into itself and set me down where it wanted me. Above on the landing, a clock I had never seen before hung crooked on the wall. Its face bore no numbers, only a circle of faint scratches, like fingernails dragging around and around. The pendulum swung without sound, but I felt it in my chest. Every motion matched the rhythm of a heartbeat, not mine slow, deliberate, heavy, like it came from something buried deep beneath the floor. Every time the brass weight reached its peak, the air thickened, as if the house inhaled with it and exhaled when it fell. I touched the casing, and pain shot through my fingertips as though I'd pressed them to ice. But when I looked at my hand, it was damp with something warm. The pendulum stopped moving, yet my chest kept pounding to its rhythm. A faint voice whispered behind the glass. Not Sarah's voice exactly, but close enough to make my throat tighten. The clock spoke in fragments, words broken by the swing. Tick, give tick, her tick back. The needle hands spun backward, too fast to follow, then halted at a blank place where no hour should exist. The glass fogged over from inside, forming words in breath. Sarah's breath. Help me. The wall around the clock shuddered as if something crawled through the beams beneath the wallpaper. I pressed my ear to it, and heard not gears, not ticking, but her heartbeat racing, then slowing, then stopping, then starting again, too slow to keep her alive, too strong to be human. The air smelled faintly of scorched wood mixed with perfume, rotted sweet. The pendulum began swinging on its own, faster, harder, until it slammed against its case like it wanted to break free. The whispers grew louder, layered, many voices chanting in unison. "You should not have come. You will stay until she is done with you." I staggered back, but the clock tore itself from the wall, and high. Tear the floor without breaking, still swinging, still marking Sarah's pulse instead of time. From somewhere deeper in the house, I heard a door creak open, even though no one had touched it. I forced the front door open just to breathe, but the air outside was worse. The garden Sarah loved so much had rotted into something still and watchful. No birds, no insects, no wind. Even the weeds bowed inward, as though the soil itself leaned close to here. The house loomed behind me, but its shadow stretched farther than it should have, past the trees, past the fence, as though it refused to let me go. The candle I carried guttered in a wind I could not feel. The flowers Sarah once tended lay blackened, their petals curled in silent screams, and the earth beneath my boots shifted soft, not with rain, but with something moving underneath. I knelt and brushed the dirt aside. It was warm like flesh still alive. When I pressed deeper, I felt it pulse once. A slow tremor echoing through the roots. A whisper rose from the ground. Not Sarah's. Not any voice I knew yet. It spoke her name over and over, dragging the syllables through the soil until they came out cracked and broken. The air thickened sweet and foul. I could smell decay and perfume, mingled together the scent of a coffin forced open. In the distance, I saw the old stone well behind the house. Its rope swung though there was no wind, and the bucket rattled against the stones like teeth chattering in cold fear. I took a step toward it, and the ground quivered beneath me like something warning me back. But Sarah's voice cut through the silence, clear, desperate calling from that direction. I froze because I could not tell if she was begging for help or luring me closer. The weeds bent toward me as I walked, each blade of grass, each thorned stem craned, as if straining to hear my footsteps. When I reached the well, I peered inside. Darkness, no water, no reflection. Just a deep, endless throat of stone breathing upward. I called her name, and the echo returned, not as my voice but hers, repeating the word forever like it had fallen and would never hit bottom. Behind me the house groaned like it was laughing. I gripped the edge of the well, the stones slick with moss that smelled faintly of iron. When I called Sarah's name again, the echo didn't return in my voice. It came back in hers, distant, raw, trembling like something trapped far below. The rope jerked against the pulley. The bucket swayed, though I hadn't touched it. The sound wasn't rope on stone. It was breath. Slow and deep, as if the well itself was alive, inhaling me. The echo spoke again, but it wasn't my word anymore. My own name rolled up from the darkness, warped and drawn out, syllables stretched like tendons pulled too tight. I staggered back, but my feet sank into the soil as if the earth wanted to keep me still. I leaned over once more, candle trembling, and whispered, "Where are you?" The response was laughter, Sarah's laughter, but thin, strained, like it had been scraped across rusted metal before reaching me. Then words followed, impossible, but clear. "I never left. You did." A wind rose suddenly, though the trees didn't move. It came from below, smelling of damp wood and something older, something dead too long to name. The candle went out, yet the stone glowed faintly in my hands, lit from within like blood pulsing through marble veins. And then I heard it. Not just Sarah's voice, but others, dozens, hundreds, layered beneath hers, murmuring, pleading, warning. "Pull me up. Bury me again. Let me out." They weren't in unison. They were fighting each other to be heard. The bucket creaked, as if heavy with something unseen. The rope strained and the crank began to turn on its own, lowering, lowering until I realized there was nothing at the end. No bucket, no rope, just endless descent. I whispered her name one last time, and this time the echo did return. Perfect, precise, but it said it twice. Not Sarah. Me. Me. The ground beneath me heaved, and the house behind me groaned, and I understood. The well wasn't calling Sarah back. It was calling me down. I left the well behind, though it felt more accurate to say it let me go. The house waited silent as I stepped inside again, its door already open, as if it had expected my return. The air grew heavier on the upper floors. Like climbing through water thick with memory, dust floated in the stairwell, not drifting but hanging perfectly still, as though afraid to land. In the attic, the air burned cold and dry. The only light came from a slit in the roof where the moon forced its way through crooked boards, and there, hanging in the corner, was Sarah's old dress. Lace stiffened, yellowed, sagging like shed skin on a nail. I whispered her name without meaning to, and the hem stirred, swaying as though caught in a wind that did not exist. The motion stopped when I held my breath, and started again when I exhaled. It was breathing with me. I stepped closer, and the boards underfoot groaned, but not with weight. They groaned in pain. I touched the fabric. It was cold, wet with something thicker than water, smelling faintly of copper. And as my fingers brushed the sleeve, a ripple passed through it from shoulder to cuff, like muscle flexing under skin. The ceiling sloped low, forcing me to stoop, and as I did, a shadow rose from beneath the dress, not cast by me, not cast by anything real. It swayed on the wall beside me in perfect time with my heartbeat. And then I heard it. A single whispered word in Sarah's voice. Where? The lace moved like hands clutching at me, the sleeves trying to slide over my arms, the bodice stiffening as if it longed to take shape again. I yanked back and fell against a trunk, sending it crashing open. Inside were photographs of Sarah, dozens, maybe hundreds, but her face had been burned away in each, leaving only the edges of her smile still curling at the corners of the ruined paper. The dress stopped moving as soon as I looked away, but when I turned back, it was no longer's. Hanging from the nail, it stood upright, sleeves open wide, waiting. From somewhere deep below, the well exhaled, and I swear the attic floor rose to meet my feet. I stumbled down from the attic, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The hall was dark, moonlight cutting narrow lines through warped glass, and for the first time I noticed my own shadow on the wall, long, sharp, trembling with every step. But then there was another one beside it, moving in perfect rhythm with mine, though I carried no lantern and no second figure stood behind me. I stopped breathing, and the shadow kept walking for 2 more steps before it froze. When I moved again, it followed, but just slightly out of sync, as though it was rehearsing being me rather than simply copying. The hair at the back of my neck lifted, that ancient animal sense screaming that I was not alone. I whispered Sarah's name, not to call her, but to test the air. Both shadows turned their heads toward me. I pressed myself flat against the wall and reached for the candle I'd dropped, fingers brushing only cold floorboards. The darkness around me felt thick, deliberate, like it wanted to hold my hands down. A soft creak came from the parlor, the sound of a rocking chair slowly shifting weight. I hadn't touched it since Sarah died, but it was moving now, steady and calm, like someone was waiting for me to join them. The second shadow lifted an arm, beckoning me forward, and I swear I felt my own elbow twitch in response. Though I hadn't moved a muscle, I forced myself past it, down the narrow hallway, refusing to look again at the wall. But when I reached the stairs, the sound changed. The steps beneath my feet weren't counting up or down in normal numbers. They groaned backward, whispering in a sequence I couldn't place, as if the house itself were undoing time one tread at a time. By the landing I was sweating cold, breathing shallow, trying not to listen, but the voice came anyway, low and close, like someone's lips against my ear. "You brought me back." I spun, but nothing stood there, only that second shadow on the wall, smiling though it had no mouth. I reached the parlour, and there it was. The hearth, black with years of ash that should have lain still but didn't. The soot trembled as though stirred by an invisible breath, rising and falling like a sleeping chest. No flame, no heat, yet the air shimmered faintly as if waiting for fire to return. I crouched, thinking maybe a draught had slipped down the chimney. But the sound wasn't wind. It was whispering. Low, broken syllables at first, then clearer, shaping themselves into words I almost recognized. Sarah's voice, dry and brittle, not speaking but practicing. Trying to remember how. I pressed my ear closer to the cold brick, and the ash shifted toward me, curling upward like smoke in reverse. It traced patterns I couldn't read, glyphs in dust that vanished when I blinked. Then a single ember glowed in the dark. Not hot, not burning, just watching. It pulsed in time with the whispers, like a heart remembering how to beat. I said her name, and the glow sharpened, the whispers rising, layering over one another, as if the hearth was full of voices trapped and waiting to breathe. One called out, "Help me." Another hissed, "Let me out." But Sarah's alone was calm. She simply said, "Stay." The temperature dropped so fast, frost gathered on the inside of the mantle. The whispering shifted, no longer forming words but laughter, soft and rhythmic, as though counting me in. I reached toward the ash, fingers numb, and the ember darted backward as if afraid to be touched. The hearth exhaled, and a thin stream of soot shot up the chimney, twisting like a black ribbon. Yet no wind followed it. Behind me, the rocking chair moved again, creaking in slow applause. And from the hall came a second sound. The deliberate tread of bare feet on wood, wet, leaving no prints I could see, but marking the floor with the scent of rain-soaked earth. I backed away, but the hearth whispered louder now, chanting the psalm. 3 words in Sarah's voice. "It's your turn." And in the walls around me, other voices joined in, repeating the same line until it wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a command. I fled the parlour, taking the stairs 2 at a time, but the house slowed me down. Each step clung to my boots like it didn't want to let go. By the time I reached the 2nd floor, I was breathing hard, but the air up there was warm, too warm, like someone had just walked out of a room and left the door open. Sarah's bedroom was at the end of the hall. I hadn't stepped inside since the funeral. The door gave way under my hand, slow, reluctant, as if it knew what waited inside. The smell hit first. Faint perfume, the kind that lingers on skin long after it fades from the bottle. The curtains barely stirred, yet the air carried weight, a presence heavy enough to bend the floorboards. And on the bedspread was an indentation, deep and fresh, like someone had just risen from sleep. I touched the sheets. They were warm. Not room temperature, warm, like a body had lain there moments ago. I pulled them back, half expecting to see her, half praying I wouldn't. The pillow bore the hollow of a head, the faintest trace of breath still caught in the fabric. I whispered, "Sarah," without meaning to, and the mattress shifted. No creak, no spring, just a slow settling, as though someone invisible turned over to face me, the faint sound of fabric moving, sheets brushing against skin. Though there was nothing there to move them, my heart slammed so hard I tasted copper. And then, softly, as if right beside my ear, her voice came again. "Lie down." The words weren't an invitation. They were an order. I stepped back, but the bed rose to meet me, just slightly, like it was reaching up, begging me not to go. Every thread hummed with heat, with memory, with something Sarah left behind that refused to fade. At the far wall, the mirror I'd covered years ago had slipped its sheet. My reflection looked wrong, delayed, like it wasn't sure it wanted to follow me anymore. And when I turned to leave, I caught a second. on shape lying on the bed in the corner of my eye. Not Sarah, not anything I could name. Just weight. Just presence. Pressing the mattress deeper as though waiting for me to take my place beside it. I didn't run. I couldn't. The door closed behind me on its own, soft as a sigh, and the sheets rustled like they were laughing. I forced myself down the narrow hallway toward the nursery, though every instinct screamed to turn back. The door was already ajar. Not wide, just enough to let a slice of darkness spill into the hall. Inside, the air was stale, dust hanging heavy as if the room hadn't been opened in years. But the rocking horse swayed once, gently, like something unseen had brushed past it. On the dresser sat Sarah's childhood doll, the porcelain one she refused to throw away. Its lips were always chipped, a hairline crack running down the mouth like a scar, but now the split was wider, as if the doll had been trying to speak in silence for decades and had finally torn itself open to make room for the words. I stepped closer, and the floor moaned beneath me. The doll's head turned, slow, deliberate, though no hand touched it. Then came the sound. A thin, rasping whisper, leaking from its throat. A voice too soft to place, but too sharp to ignore. It wasn't speaking to me at first. It was repeating something, over and over, as though practicing lines in an empty theatre. I leaned down, heart thundering, and the words became clear. Don't let him in. Don't let him in. Don't let him in. Each repetition cracked the porcelain wider, like the warning itself was breaking its mouth apart. I reached out. I don't know why. And the doll's eyes rolled to meet mine. They weren't glass anymore. They were wet, alive, glistening, like something trapped behind them was looking out. Then its voice changed. Higher, faster, frantic. No longer warning me, but pleading. Take it back. Take it back before he comes through. The rocking horse slammed against the wall, hard enough to splinter wood. The air grew thick, vibrating, and every toy in the room rattled like they were caught in a low earthquake. And still the doll's mouth kept moving, words spilling too fast to follow, but I understood the rhythm. It was count, ting down. I bolted for the door, but just before I crossed the threshold the voice cut off, sharp and final. The crack in its mouth sealed itself smooth, as if it had never been there. Only one phrase remained ringing in my ears, clear as though whispered by Sarah herself. You're already too late. I didn't remember leaving the nursery, but suddenly I was in the hallway again, staring at the writing desk near the window. The drawer I hadn't touched in years was open. Inside, on top of brittle envelopes and faded receipts, lay a single letter. Sarah's handwriting. I'd know it anywhere, looping and deliberate, the kind that looks calm even when the words shake. But there was no wax seal, no ink smudge, just a faint shimmer, like heat rising off pavement across the fold. When I reached for it, the paper hummed, not like sound, but like a vibration through bone. The closer my fingers came, the louder it got, until it wasn't humming anymore. It was speaking. Her voice. Not coming from the room, not from my memory. From the letter itself, whispering my name in a tone both loving and cold. The kind of cold you feel when someone you trust suddenly knows too much about you. I unfolded it carefully. The words weren't written in ink. They were pressed into the page like scars, shallow but deep enough to cast shadows. My eyes struggled to track them, the letters shifting as if they didn't want to stay read. You were supposed to come sooner, it said. You were supposed to hear me before they did. The letter pulsed in my hands, the way a living thing resists being held. I tried to stop reading, but my lips moved anyway, sounding out each word as though Sarah were forcing breath through me. Do not let them turn the key. If you speak my words aloud, you will feed the door. If you stay silent, it will starve. Choose. The paper burned cold in my grip. The shimmering seal hadn't vanished. It shifted to the edges of the page, like frost racing outward, sealing me in rather than the letter shut. Behind me, the mirror in the hallway gave back more than my reflection. I saw a figure, not Sarah, not me, standing over my shoulder, reading with me, nodding along to E. Very word. I slammed the letter shut, but her voice didn't stop. Now it was inside my skull. Calm, insistent, patient. Read it out loud. Let them hear, or let them starve. Either way, you're not walking out alone. I staggered into the back hall, clutching the letter, but the floor plan made no sense anymore. The corridor bent too far, as though the house had stretched itself overnight. At the very end stood a window I'd never seen before, framed in warped wood that pulsed faintly under my hand. It didn't look outside. Where there should have been the yard, the hedges, the old maple tree, there was only a shifting darkness, pale shapes drifting inside it like ash on deep water. The glass wasn't cold like a window should be. It was warm, the way skin feels after fever. And then Sarah called to me. Not an echo of memory, not the half-voice of grief. Her real voice, low and unshaken, coming from just beyond the pane. Come through. They can't follow here. The darkness writhed as she spoke, rearranging itself into something almost human, then falling apart again like smoke in wind. My breath fogged the glass, but when I wiped it clear, it wasn't my face looking back. Her face. Her lips moved in time with the voice, but the sound was wrong. Too near, too loud, as if it were inside my chest instead of outside the house. I pressed my palm against the glass and it yielded, soft as flesh, then snapped firm again, like it had caught itself letting me in. You've kept me waiting too long, she said. Don't you remember what you promised? Promised? My hand trembled against the pane. I'd made no promise to her, or at least, not that I remembered. But guilt swelled anyway, thick and sour, like I had broken something sacred, and the house was punishing me for it. Behind me, the hallway stretched longer, the floorboards groaning as though something heavy crawled toward me on its belly. I turned, but nothing was there, only the faraway sound of breathing, deep and slow, as though the walls themselves were drawing air. Sarah's voice cut through again, sharp and close. Do it now, before they get to the door. I pressed harder against the window. For a heartbeat, my fingers slipped through the glass like water, warm and wet, and I felt something grip them on the other side. Not a hand, not even human, just hunger wearing her voice like a mask. I yanked back, barely in time. The pane rippled shut, her face flattening into darkness. And then, faintly, the window whispered my own name back to me. Wrong, stretched, as though someone was practicing how to say it. I backed away from that impossible window, heart rattling like loose glass in a storm. The air changed as I moved, not cooler, not warmer, but heavier, as though the atmosphere itself had grown thicker with intent. I heard it then, faint at first but undeniable, the sound of inhaling. Curtains along the hallway swelled outward, perfectly in sync, as if some vast set of lungs hid behind the plaster walls. The floor rose beneath my feet in subtle waves, boards flexing as if pushed upward by an unseen diaphragm. The entire house was breathing, slow, measured, and deliberate. I froze. It wasn't random. The rhythm matched mine. When I held my breath, the house held its breath. When I exhaled, it sighed with me, wood creaking like ribs settling back into place. Then the murmuring began, low, indistinct, but coming from every direction at once. Not quite voices, not quite wind, more like the muttering of someone half asleep and dreaming in another room. I pressed my ear to the wall. It wasn't solid anymore. The plaster quivered under my cheek, warm and damp, like living flesh, and the murmurs sharpened. I could almost make out the words, "Welcome back. Welcome back. Don't leave again." My stomach turned cold. This wasn't haunting. It was recognition. The house knew me. Not as a visitor, but as something it had been waiting for, maybe even grooming. Somewhere deeper inside, a door slammed hard enough to rattle the window panes, and the murmuring stopped. Then came the inhale again, louder this time, dragging the air from the hall like the building itself was sucking me inward. I tried to move, but every step forward felt like stepping into wet sand, the floor gripping my shoes, refusing to let go. And then, beneath the breathing, I heard another sound, a heartbeat. Not mine, not Sarah's. Something deeper, older, pulsing through the walls like blood through veins. "Yo, you feel it now, don't you?" Sarah's voice coiled out of the ceiling beams, calm and tender. "It's been waiting for you. Don't fight it. Just breathe with it. Let it learn you." I bolted, but the air thickened to syrup, every gasp sinking closer to the house's breath. For a moment I thought I'd black out, and then I realized with bone-deep dread I wasn't breathing with it anymore. I was breathing inside it. I stumbled down the corridor, shoulders slamming into the wall, trying to tear myself free of that suffocating rhythm. The house exhaled as I moved, a long, satisfied groan that shivered through the floorboards. That's when I saw it. The paint on the hallway walls wasn't just cracked with age. The edges curled upward as if something beneath had been trying to claw its way out. I reached out, and the flaking surface peeled back like old scabs, exposing raw plaster scarred with deep grooves. Not random scratches, deliberate, measured. I followed them with my fingers, shallow at first, then deeper, sharper, until they bit into my skin. Each cluster of gouges curved and slashed in a rhythm I almost recognized. Not numbers, not letters, syllables. Sarah's name, over and over, carved into the bones of the house. The air smelled faintly of rust and mold, but when I put my face close, it wasn't rot I was smelling. It was blood, fresh and metallic, as if someone had carved these marks moments ago. A whisper rose up from the scratches themselves, soft as breath on glass. Say it. Say her name. Feed her back to us. My throat tightened. I hadn't spoken Sarah's name aloud since the funeral. The guilt that surged up was sharp and unexpected. A blade turned inward. My mouth opened on its own. But before I could speak, I heard something else, moving inside the wall. Not rats, not pipes. Fingers. Fingernails dragging downward, impatient. The grooves lengthened while I watched, plaster crumbling under invisible hands. I stepped back, heart slamming against my ribs, but the wall pulsed forward like it was leaning closer to me. "They tried to cover me," Sarah's voice murmured, echoing inside my skull. "They buried me under paint and lies. But you're peeling it back. You're helping me breathe." The scratches deepened in a single violent stroke, spattering chalk dust into the air. For a moment I swore I saw her hand, pale, thin, broken at the wrist, push through the wall and vanish again. I ran my fingers over the fresh groove, warm, slick, like touching living skin. "Say it," the wall begged. "Say her name before they silence her again." Night came down heavy, pressing against the house like a held breath. I didn't light a fire, couldn't bring myself to. But when I passed the hearth, I saw smoke rising from cold ash. No heat, no flame, just a thin grey ribbon writhing upward in a shape too deliberate to be chance. It moved like handwriting in the air, letters forming, breaking apart, reforming again. My name first, then hers, then words I couldn't bear to read.
I knelt closer. The smoke smelled wrong. Not wood, not coal. It smelled like burnt hair, sweet and sickening. And underneath that, something almost sweet, like candle wax and perfume. Sarah's perfume, the one she wore the night she disappeared. The chimney whispered, soft, feminine and close, though the sound came from deep inside the brick. "You never looked for me," it said. "You let them put me in the ground before I was gone." My stomach turned. The whisper thickened, twisting into shapes I recognized. The sound of her laugh, then her cry, then something else. A voice not quite hers, but wearing her tone like a borrowed dress. Smoke curled out in loops, weaving itself into a figure, almost human, shoulders hunched, head bowed. A long, pale arm extended from the haze, fingers pointing at the mantel. There, under the edge of the cracked stone, I saw something wedged deep in the mortar. A fragment of paper, blackened at the corners but not burned away. I reached for it, and the whisper turned sharp. "Careful. They're listening. They don't want you to have this." The walls creaked in warning, as if the whole house disapproved. The smoke hand dissolved into curls of grey, then snaked back into the flue like it had never been there. But the whisper lingered. "Read it out loud. Give me back my voice." I pried the paper loose. It came away damp, as though the chimney itself had been sweating. Words were scrawled in Sarah's handwriting, jagged and hurried, a message too short, too desperate to explain itself. It said only 3 words: "They know everything." And then the chimney groaned, a deep animal sound, and smoke surged upward in one violent breath, spelling something in the air I couldn't deny. "Run!" I followed the hallway toward the attic, still clutching Sarah's burned note, the ink smearing against my palm. Every step creaked like a warning, but another sound cut through the groaning beams. Delicate, mechanical, almost innocent. A lullaby. It floated down the stairs like a child humming through their teeth. Not a record. Not a phone. A real, winding music box, each note slightly off, warped by age. I found it sitting on an old dresser under a sheet of dust. The lid was open, its brass ballerina bent and tarnished, spinning without anyone turning the key. I reached to stop it, but the crank resisted me, stiff as bone. The gears turned themselves. The melody skipped, slowed, and then halted on a single high note, hanging sharp in the air, vibrating like a scream caught in the teeth of the machine. I swear the walls shuddered with it. And then Sarah's voice came, not from the box, but from behind me, close enough that I felt her breath on my neck. "That's where I stopped singing," she whispered. "That's where he found me." I spun around. No one there. Only dust swirling in the beam of my flashlight, moving like it had been disturbed by someone passing through. The box started again, grinding louder, the gears complaining as if they were chewing metal instead of air. I bent low and noticed something beneath it. A ring of black soot staining the dresser top, thin but deliberate, like the music box had been sitting in fire rather than dust. My fingers brushed it, and my vision blurred. For an instant, the room around me wasn't an attic. It was a cellar. Candlelit, walls dripping wet. Sarah crouched in the corner, crying and mouthing words I couldn't hear. The music stopped again. I snapped back to the attic. My pulse slammed against my ribs. The ballerina figure leaned toward me, though no hand had touched it. Its broken arm pointed at the floorboards, Lee. Like an accusation. Beneath the warped wood, something tapped. Once, twice, then 3 times, perfectly matching the rhythm of the lullaby. "He buried the rest of me here," Sarah said, voice calm, almost gentle. "Help me finish the song." The crank spun one last time, then froze hard. The note it hit was so shrill it made my teeth ache, and from somewhere deep in the boards, something answered back. humming along with her. I tore at the attic floorboards with my bare hands until my nails split and bled. Something was buried here. Sarah's voice told me so. But what I found wasn't bone, not yet. It was a key, small, iron, blackened with rust, so cold it burned my palm. Its teeth were jagged, not like any house key I'd ever seen. And there was no tag, no door nearby to match it. Just that awful feeling in my gut. Like the key wasn't meant to open something, it was meant to feed something. When I picked it up, the house reacted. A low, guttural sound rolled through the beams like distant thunder, but it wasn't coming from outside. It came from the walls themselves, a shiver of hunger. I staggered back, clutching it tight, and the temperature dropped until my breath hung white in the air. Sarah's voice returned, barely a whisper now, like she was speaking through clenched teeth. Don't lose it. Don't give it back to them. It's mine. It's still mine. The floor vibrated under my feet. Dust rained from the rafters. Somewhere below, I heard a bolt slide open on its own, a lock I hadn't touched. But there were no locked doors in this house. At least, not ones I could see. I crept down from the attic, key still biting into my skin, and passed room after room. Each one was wrong in some small way. The walls seemed to curve inward. The windows looked out onto darkness thicker than night. Every step I took, the sound echoed twice, first as wood, then as a heartbeat, not my own. At the base of the stairs, the whisper grew louder, overlapping itself like two voices speaking at once. Find it! Turn it! Open me! Open me! Open me! I pressed the key against the walls as I passed, half mad with the urge to jam it into anything that would take it. And then I found it. In the hallway I swore I'd walked a dozen times before. A seam. Not a door, not really. Just a faint line in the plaster, pulsing slightly, like a vein under skin. The key quivered in my hand. My mouth went dry. Sarah's voice sharpened to a hiss. They hid me here. They locked me away. Now you're holding the only way back. The wall throbbed once, hard enough to knock the breath from my lungs. The key turned by itself, and the seam began to bleed. The key was still warm from turning itself when I saw it. A single, perfect handprint on the hallway window. Not fog, not dust. Something darker, smeared deep into the glass, like the oils of living skin. I froze. I had just passed this window minutes ago. It had been clean. Now it was pressed inward from the other side. Fingers splayed, palm flat, the lines clear enough to read like scripture. I touched the glass. Cold, but not lifeless. It almost pulsed. And when I leaned close, breath fogging the pain, I swear I saw another layer behind my reflection. Sarah's face, pale and still, looking out from where no one could stand. I stepped back fast, heart punching my ribs. The handprint pressed harder, as though whoever made it was leaning in, testing the barrier. The fingers dragged slowly downward, leaving trails as if clawing their way through thick syrup. I whispered her name. Bad idea. The window groaned under an invisible weight, the wood frame creaking like it might shatter. A faint whisper bled through the glass. Let me through. You opened their door. Open mine. The other windows joined in. One by one, handprints bloomed like frost. All the same size, all hers. Some slapped hard against the glass. Some tapped in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Everywhere I looked, her palms marked a path, leading me back toward the seam in the wall, where the key still dripped a single bead of blood that wasn't mine. I wanted to run. I should have run. But when I turned for the front door, every window in the house went dark at once, sealing me inside. Not night dark, deeper. Like the glass itself had filled with black water, swallowing the outside world whole. And in that reflection, I didn't see myself anymore. I saw her, standing behind me, hand raised to the glass, only she wasn't trapped. I was. The prints beat against the panes, faster now, like fists demanding on. Try. Then all at once they stopped. Silence. Total, crushing silence. But when I looked back, the original handprint had changed. The lines of her palm had deepened, carving into the glass, spelling 3 letters I almost didn't want to read. M-Y-N. I staggered backward from the carved glass, blood still slicking the key in my hand, and shouted her name. Sarah! The house answered. Sarah. Sarah. The first echo was wood and plaster, hollow, dead. But the second was her voice, alive, aching, almost angry. I tried again. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? The second one trembled, as if she were forcing the words through clenched teeth. Each step I took down the hall made the walls murmur. Not creaks, not settling beams, syllables. The house was speaking back to me, matching me breath for breath. Every time I said something, it returned it twice, as if I'd woken some vast, unseen throat in the walls. I whispered, What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Her voice cracked on the second reply. Not a plea, a demand. The deeper I went, the stronger it grew. When I reached the seam in the plaster, the one the key had opened like a wound, I spoke without meaning to, throat raw. What's behind this? What's behind this? What's behind this? The second voice didn't wait to finish. It broke into laughter. Sarah's laugh. But wrong. Too low. Too steady. The wall pulsed under my hand, and this time it spoke first. You. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. My ears rang. I shouted to drown it out. This isn't real! This isn't real. This isn't real. Her voice replied with icy calm. Then softer, almost kindly. But you are. I slammed my fist against the wall, screaming, and the house screamed back, not as an echo, but as if it felt the blow. The whole frame shuddered, floorboards groaned, plaster dust rained down, and in the dust, words formed on the floor, not carved, written by invisible fingers. We hear you. The key in my hand turned itself again, cutting into my palm. The seam split wider, spilling a slow trickle of something black and warm. It smelled like rust. It smelled like her hair. Let me in, her voice whispered, not as an echo now, but direct, right behind my ear. I spun around, but no one stood there. Just shadows layered too thick to be empty. When I turned back, the wall was gone. In its place yawned a doorway, black and wet at the edges, breathing like lungs. And inside, I heard my own voice call my name. Twice. I stepped through because there was no other choice. The doorway didn't lead into another room. It led into nowhere, a corridor too narrow to turn around, walls slick as if they'd been sweating for years. My own voice still called my name from somewhere ahead, faint and wrong, like it had been recorded underwater. Behind me, the house shifted. A long breath. Inward. Then the door slammed shut with a sound like a coffin lid dropped on stone. Final. Absolute. The darkness wasn't empty. It pulsed. Every few seconds I swore I felt it lean closer, pressing its ear to me, waiting for me to speak. And like a fool, I did. Sarah. 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 The double echo again. First hollow, then hers, so close it made my neck hair stand on end. I ran my hand along the wall to steady myself. It was warm. Too warm. like touching skin. And then it started to beat. A slow, steady pulse, sinking with my heart until I couldn't tell which throb belonged to me. My footsteps no longer echoed. The sound was swallowed whole. But something else replaced them. Another set of steps, perfectly matched, just half a beat behind me. I stopped. So did they. "Where are you?" I whispered. "Where are you? Where are you?" Her voice answered, almost laughing. Something cold brushed my ear. "I'm right here." I spun, but the darkness spun with me. No up, no down, no walls, just the feeling of being watched by something that already knew me better than I knew myself. A faint light appeared ahead, a single candle flame swaying, the same one from the parlour that refused to die. I ran toward it, but the faster I moved, the slower I reached it, as if the hallway stretched to keep me here. When I finally grasped it, the flame guttered out on its own. And Sarah spoke not through walls, not through echoes, but directly, as if standing inches from my lips. "You came too late. They've already opened the door. Now you're staying with me." The floor dropped out from under me. I wasn't falling, I was sinking, swallowed whole by something that wanted me more than life itself. My lungs burned, my vision blurred, and through it all, her voice was calm, steady, unbroken. "Hush. Don't fight it. This house doesn't let go." The last thing I heard before blackness took me, the front door closing upstairs, a sound like earth over a coffin. And in the silence that followed, only her voice remained.